A lot of people say that the One Piece card game's success has been a fluke. Personally, I do think this is cope from people who are mad that their own card games aren't doing as well. The truth is that when you do enough things right, you get to build, grow, and maintain a community. And I'm going to look at some of the things One Piece has done to manage their game so well. From its overwhelming focus on new player accessibility, to amazing competitive support, to actually listening to their community and making difficult changes where it's needed. It's no wonder One Piece has been able to grow and consistently hit the number 4 spot on the top selling card game list for 2 years in a row, blowing right past every non-Big 3 card game on the market. The first thing to mention when seeing One Piece's success is how new player friendly its products are. Compared to MTG, Yu-Gi-Oh! And other games, One Piece is consistently the best value on the market. Take a look at One Piece's starter decks, for example. We find that not only does One Piece have the most starter decks that are competitively viable, but also the best price starter decks out of any game. One Piece starter decks have an MSRP for about $15, and it only takes 2 to get a playset. Yu-Gi-Oh! Matches this, needing 3 decks at $10 MSRP. But Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks will need, on average, more outside cards. MTG starter decks are by far the worst, having no MSRP, so stores can charge more. Not only that, most are not competitively playable depending on the format. There are some good products in Magic, such as the Challenger series or some of the Commander precons, but it's so all over the place, a new player would struggle to make heads or tails here, especially compared to how straightforward One Piece's products are. And that's the real kicker, how absurdly well chosen the One Piece starter decks are. Bandai has set up a system where we get 6 new starter decks, 1 for each color, focusing on older leaders that are popular. This is great for new players because it gives them time-tested strategies in any playstyle that's already partially viable. It's great for old players since it keeps older decks at a consistent power level. And it's great for deck building since it's a massive barrage of new, often generic tools. While the specifics have changed, Bandai has been releasing decks in this style at the beginning, at the 2nd anniversary, and has committed to doing it again next year. And I said these starter decks were often meta viable, and here's the breakdown on that. About 14 of the 20 starter decks released so far have been viable on release. It gets a bit higher, about 16, if you're looking for decks that became viable later on. Needless to say, that's a crazy ratio. Not only that, these decks have clear sets with cards to pull from. The newest wave of decks tie directly into a reprint set released alongside them, even including a pack inside them with no MSRP markup. Of course, there are dud starter decks, but these are the exception and not the rule. Main sets double down on being new player friendly. They have the highest rate of high rarity cards given per price, not to mention the 2 to 3 alt arts in each box to drive value. The most important rarity being ultra rare makes the deck's most expensive pieces cap out about $10 for only the most highly sought after cards. This does really only hold true when product supply is handled, but section on how they fix that later. Secret rares have been more of a problem in their 1 per box system, but they have been kept to mostly yellow cards and niche options for gimmicky decks. That's why most new secret rares tend to cap out at around $20 to $30. While it's a fundamental base that's a lot healthier than, let's say, Yu-Gi-Oh!, One Piece's rarity system is of course supplemented by the collector's market. Whales can chase expensive alternate arts and SPs, allowing boxes to have value outside of expensive staple cards, thus letting players afford to pick up the game, and for the community to grow as quick as it has been. One Piece has a variety of rotating alternate rarity types to drive collectabilities in a way much simpler than MTG and even Yu-Gi-Oh! You got alt arts, SPs, and mangas. The SPs rotate art style, but tend to cycle through a few popular ones. It's simple, looks amazing, and keeps base rarity cards prices lower. Manga rares also help this, but really only on a bigger vendor and reseller scale. Being accessible while catering to collectors is ridiculously easy. One Piece even proved that you can reprint cards into the ground and still maintain collector value and interest, by simply reprinting these older cards with new alternative artwork. One Piece's Premium the Best has been the best implementation of a reprint set in years, including not only new alternatives of old artwork, but also new full arts of common and rare cards that never got them before. Combine this with Sanji, whose support for older themes, and with a new wave of legacy-focused starter decks, and you have the perfect recipe for success. I just want people to understand how reprint sets can be an opportunity to expand collector interest while getting new players into the game, not just a way to nuke the market and ruin value. And I'm going to be very mean here and say that any card game that can't make an accessible reprint set work is either lazy, greedy, or stupid. This focus on accessibility goes beyond price. It's also baked into the mechanics itself. Ask any experienced TCG player, and they'll tell you that One Piece is one of the easiest games to pick up and start playing, being very similar to other card games, and especially similar to other Bandai card games. And that's by design. One Piece is built ground up from a new player perspective, both in ease of play and what people like. It's got a flashy Commander-style system baked into the game, really eye-catching for new players and catnip for casuals. There's a limited number of keywords that hasn't been added onto since Set 2, keeping the complexity down. The game is very board-heavy or creature trading-centric, also catnip for casual players. Combos are kept to a minimum, with anything extending past 3 cards being very unusual. And lastly, this is a trigger-style game, which plays into the anime aesthetics. I despise the concept of a trigger system, but the average player finds them really fun, so what do I know? It's little stuff that's baked into One Piece's DNA that makes it very easy to start playing. The Dawn system is very intuitive, and no major phases knocks out one of the first minor hurdles new players have to wrap their head around. I do think it's lucky One Piece functions very well on a competitive scene, because Bandai really cooked the game designed for mass casual appeal. It somehow gets to the best of both worlds, giving competitive players a home and allowing new players to pick up the game immediately, which then plays into how Bandai runs general events and the new player onboarding experience. One Piece has a clean tutorial app for learning the rules if a starter deck is too much for you. One Piece Day events, the college tours, Bandai Card Fest, and new player tutorial days have been great places to pick up the game where players get to test out solid demo decks. It creates a strong physical connection to the game. By getting potential players with cards in hand, learning what it's all about. IRL events are crucial because it's the best opportunity to directly sell people on the game, and it creates positive shared experiences, plus good word of mouth. If these events are too limited in scope, which is a fair criticism, One Piece also has plenty of new player-friendly local level events, like pre-release, buddy battle, and structure deck battles. There's something here for people who want to play card games and have a fun time with friends. Competitive doesn't have to be intimidating, and you don't even really have to approach it. You're welcome here anyway. Every possible type of player can find a home in the card game, and it's something so many modern card games just forget to try to do. For another Bandai example, Battle Spirit Saga focused only on competitive events and forgot to build the casual baseline that maintains the game on a local level. Union Arena partially learned from this, but I don't think it did as good of a job with its casual events, nor with its new player onboarding events. It should have doubled down on the good base it had with super pre-release events and the demo decks at Bandai Card Fest. Rare battles are an entire can of worms of whack, but that's a different video. But the point stands. If you put in the work to actually onboard new players will try your game. Now, there's also something to be said about the popularity of One Piece's brand, which has been exploding on just about every level, from the anime and manga, to the live-action show, to tie-ins like video games, and of course, the card game. It's definitely a leg up to getting new players willing to walk in that door. But you're telling me that games like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Star Wars Unlimited, and Dragon Ball can't get that? Just put the work into accessibility and new players will come. It's that simple, and it has always been that simple. One Piece also has some of the best competitive events, structurally and in pricing. There's plenty of online and IRL events, so anyone can play in them regardless of location. There's a clear regional to nationals pipeline, and of course, the One Piece pricing is absurdly goated, proving you don't need to offer cash pricing to make it worth for players. Yu-Gi-Oh! One Piece uses a system where regionals give pricing up to the top 512 players, with each milestone going forward getting more and more. Top 512 gets a Dawn, top 256 gets special sleeves, top 128 gets another Dawn, top 64 get an exclusive promo art card and more promo packs, top 32 gets a pack of exclusive promos, and top 16 get another exclusive promo art card and their invite, top 8 get a serialized card, and first and second get playmats. It's a system that not only heavily rewards top players, but also gives everyone who showed up a reason to keep playing. And this is on top of entry promos. You get more value for entering a One Piece regional than you do for winning a Yu-Gi-Oh! Regional. Wild stuff. Not to mention special event pricing like uncut sheets, the Championship Series stamped cards, or the one-of-one prize Luffy's. It's just really clean stuff that makes you want to play the game. Regional tournaments are of course marketing the card game, but they're also a celebration of the players. Every card game has the ability to distribute such promos and pricing. For the cost of commissioning a few more artists and printing a few thousand more cards, you can infinitely boost the satisfaction that the most dedicated portion of your community gets from your game. It shows you're interested in rewarding those players who play a titanic part in maintaining the game. It boggles my mind when games like Yu-Gi-Oh! Refuse to do anything, and they have bled competitive players from their bad policies. One Piece has never had this issue. For those of you who have watched my previous video, or my reviews of the One Piece card game, you know that I have had several complaints about the game and how it was handled. Quite simply, Bandai has moved to fix most of them. I'll start with the biggest complaint, not printing enough product. Well, since OP5, Bandai has significantly upped the distribution on each of its products. Modern sets are released in large enough numbers to mostly avoid scalpers. Now structure decks even are close enough or below MSRP online. The most meta starter deck at the moment by like a large mile, Doflamingo, is only $20. And that's if your local game store or Walmart doesn't have it. Not only that, they committed to reprinting older boxes and starter decks as they were in demand. It led to funny stuff like Set 5 being a top 5 best-selling sealed product 1 year after it was first released. And finally, Bandai created a whole reprint set in the Premium Best Of collection. Bandai is, of course, slow to move, but they do listen, at least for One Piece. And here's a list of some other changes Bandai has made. Bandai has removed screenshots from the game's artwork, as well as having given most of the relevant screenshotted cards alternative artworks. Ban list announcements are now made well in advance to avoid the confusion with the bad Whitebeard ban incident. Event tournament player caps have been dramatically expanded to most regionals having 1K player caps. Plus, there's more regional level events in general now. And my biggest personal year 1 complaint of mechanically exclusive promo cards have been phased out or made as irrelevant as possible. Most new promo cards are just really cool alt arts, and the few effect cards usually aren't competitively viable and are printed mostly for collecting purposes, such as this Banger Momonosuke, or at worst, this me and Roboco Tony Chopper. Niche use if any. We've never seen anything as bad as the Event Pack 1 cards. Bandai is willing to improve, and players see this and stick around for longer because of it. There are of course still issues, and there will always be. But unlike other games, these do get resolved eventually. Like, the only issue I'd like to see addressed is some better balancing of each color support in each set. Like, let's not juice one color and yellow each new release. But I think they're slowly working on that too, with the starter decks and the more evened out options at OP10 and OP9. At least it's much more up to debate than when compared to sets 1 through 6. Radical Beam and the Whitebeard, and then Rebecca and the Gecko Moria remain undefeated GOAT generic support runs. One Piece as a game has shaken the trading card market to its core. I remember seeing a statement online that read something like, One Piece has destroyed player expectations for what a successful card game is. This person was worried that One Piece's success would make smaller games like Star Wars Unlimited, Flesh and Blood, and even Bandai's own Union Arena seem dead by comparison, and that's a really bizarre thing to have to think about. While One Piece does have a few legs up on its competition, I do think a lot of its success comes from how Bandai has handled the game. I mean, who knew if you do enough things right, you can just be successful. But the thing I want to push is that any card game can take these successes and transfer them into their own game. While not every card game can be as mechanically new player friendly as One Piece, like you're not fixing Yu-Gi-Oh! Universes, but nothing's to stop Yu-Gi-Oh! From having better pricing or better booster boxes, except for Konami. Things can get better. Smaller games will always have local homes, as they've done since the 90s, but maybe they'll be able to take the right lessons and grow beyond that, or not fall into the limited product, limited events, and limited players trap. And who knows, if games like Yu-Gi-Oh! Can eventually get their act together, maybe they'll get replaced by the next best card game. Empires aren't forever. Competition is here. The One Piece card game isn't a fluke, it's the new standard for what a card game should offer, and every card game will be judged against it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Man, that was a lot of glazing for One Piece. Good news, my next video essay will not be so kind. I'm working on a video, here's the title, working title. How predatory does a card game have to be to survive? And oh boy, is that a super nuanced question. If you want to see more, please do gum jet pistol that subscribe button. That's how I know to make more videos like this. Like, seriously, let me know if you want more positive content. I'm doing my best.